Max Fried is getting a generational bag from the New York Yankees. Why did they give him that deal, and what do the Braves do from here? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Wednesday, December 11th, your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. And subscribers to the Substack will see this morning, we sent out an article about the state of the Braves rotation now that you officially know Max Fried is not coming back. We didn't expect it to happen, but it's now official because the New York Yankees are giving him the largest guarantee ever to a left-handed pitcher. Max Fried's getting $218 million on an 8-year deal. It's $1 million more than David Price got in his record-setting contract. And it is the fourth largest guarantee for a pitcher in baseball history. Shohei Ohtani, unique situation, obviously, he got $700 million. Yoshinobu Yamamoto got $325 million over 12 years. Garrett Cole got $324 million over 9 years. And now Max Fried gets $218 over 8. And I want to talk about what Atlanta does from here. I want to talk about why the Yankees would give Max Fried this deal and the Braves would not. But first, I just want to reminisce for a second about Max Fried. Because as much flack as Max Fried catches from Braves fans, and he does, Max Fried has caught flack from Braves fans for ineffectiveness and unavailability and things like that. His postseason record outside of that Game 6 of the World Series where he was a dog after being stepped on, the stats aren't necessarily that great, right? But since he became a full-time starter in 2019, he is one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. So if you go back to 2019, among pitchers who have covered as many innings as him, the only guy with a better ERA than Max Fried since 2019 is Garrett Cole. And that's because Garrett Cole had a very good 2019 season. If you go lowest ERA since the start of 2020, minimum 550 innings pitched. Framber Valdez and Garrett Cole are at 312. Max Scherzer's at 302. Zach Wheeler's at 294. Corbin Burns is at 288. And Max Fried's at 281. Max Fried literally, since the start of 2020, has the best ERA in baseball among pitchers that have thrown 550 innings or more. And so I understand why the Yankees targeted Max Fried. I honestly thought if he didn't go out west, he was going to go to the Red Sox. He is friends with Lucas Giolito. Jack Flaherty is also a friend of theirs. But to me, when I think about this deal, there's a couple things. This 8-year, $218 million deal. There's a couple things I got to think about here. Thing number one is that 218 stands out. If you remember, Max Fried's a union rep, right? So he is involved in the MLB Players Association pretty heavily. And a lot of those union reps understand how their contracts, their contract negotiations, and their process, their navigation through free agency sets precedents for the players after them. That's why it's so rare to see a union rep sign an early extension. Max Fried obviously did not. He played it out. And so that $218 million tells me that he specifically wanted to beat David Price's guarantee for a lefty. That obviously sets a new precedent now for left-handed starting pitching. Guaranteed more than Blake Snell, guaranteed more than any other lefty in the history of the game. And I personally believe that it's $27.25 million per year. Could Atlanta have paid $27.25 million a year? I absolutely do think they could have. I think that this is probably, if you think about this, it's through his age 39 year, right? This feels like the extra year was tacked on at the end to help the AAV. I'm thinking of this as a 7-year deal for $31 million a year. And I don't think, even if Atlanta was willing to go over that self-imposed $22 million threshold for anybody, I don't think Atlanta would have gotten to 31, right? I'm personally of the opinion that 8th year was added to lower the AAV hit for the Yankees. Max Fried was shooting the dollar amount looking to get the 218. That's what they had to do from a length perspective to make it work in their payroll, to still have the money to make another significant add because the Yankees have holes at first base, second or third, depending on where Jazz plays, maybe the outfield. They've got other issues to deal with. There is a full no trade clause in here. There is zero deferred money in this deal. Max Fried's just going to get that pay. We don't know the exact breakdown of yearly salaries, but he's going to get that 27.25 AAV on this, right? The reason the Yankees would do this is Max Fried doesn't strike out the most guys, right? His stuff isn't as loud as Corbin Burns or Blake Snell's or whoever else's. But what Max Fried does really well is he keeps runs off the board, okay? Max Fried does not get hit nearly as hard as really any other pitcher in baseball, okay? If you look at some of the numbers here for Max Fried, his hard hit rate, 99th percentile is obviously elite, first percentile is awful. 98th percentile, 82nd, 90th, 88th, 81st. He is incredibly hard to get solid contact on. His ground ball rate is one of the best in baseball. We now have bat tracking, right? We can measure swings and things like that. The percentage of what they call fast swings against Max Fried is 19%. It's bottom 15 for all pitchers. Like, dudes just don't get good swings on Max Fried. They don't make hard contact, and they don't put the ball in the air, right? He's not giving up. He's not getting shelled. It's a lot of ground balls. It's a lot of weak contact. He can go deep in games. He has 4 shutouts since 2021 as the most in Major League Baseball in that span. He had 2 complete games last year. He, I believe, is second in Braves franchise history that we know of with pitch counts and stuff for Maddox's, behind Greg Maddux. He can be efficient. He can get quick outs, but they're all weak contact. He can get strikeouts if he needs to, but it's not his game. He's got that big arsenal I always talk about where he can move around and do 4, 5, 6 different things. He can throw different pitches based on situations and what he's trying to do. He can prioritize swing and miss. He can prioritize weak ground balls or weak contact in general, all that kind of stuff. It is, for the Yankees now, this is something where not having Juan Soto in that offense lowers the ceiling of the offense. But now they've significantly raised the ceiling of the pitching staff, right? Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon. And then behind that, Luis Gil was Rookie of the Year in the American League. They've got Nestor Cortez, Marcus Stroman, Clark Schmidt. The Yankees aren't done, right? If Cortez is in the bullpen instead of the rotation, great. That'll give them a lefty in the bullpen. They've got work to do. They have to figure out how to finish this. They've got to figure out how to finish building a bullpen. I think Tanner Scott would be a great fit for the Yankees, by the way. We did spend more time on the Yankee side of this. If you want to go watch First Pitch, that's our daily MLB recap show. Me and Christian and Troy. We did spend half the show, 15 minutes yesterday, on this signing from every possible angle. But while we didn't expect Max Fried to come back to Atlanta, it still is a pitcher we've taken out of this rotation. We also got the news last night that Nathan Eovaldi is returning to the Texas Rangers on a 3-year, $75 million deal, $25 million AAV, so Atlanta would have had to have gone above that self-imposed threshold to bring in Nathan Eovaldi, and probably would have had to beat the offer from the Rangers to get him to change teams. Inertia is a strong thing. And if a guy is happy enough where he is, where he's willing to re-sign, you typically need to pay him more to get him to leave that team and come to you. So I don't even know if $25 million AAV on a 3-year deal would have gotten Nathan Eovaldi out of Texas. And so I think my question now is, what does the Braves rotation look like now? Right this second. We heard from Alex Anthopoulos on Sunday. We heard from Brian Snitker on Monday what they're looking for and their thoughts. And then who do you add to this? We'll look at that next right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby talking about Max Fried signing a generational bag with the New York Yankees and where the Atlanta Braves go from here. And reminder on this, I wrote this whole thing up over at bravestoday.com. The Braves Today Substack came out this morning, State of the Braves rotation, talking about after Max Fried, what are you looking at right now for the Braves? And when you break down this rotation, you've got 3 locks, 2 favorites for the final spots as of now, and then the field. That's how I'm looking at this, and it's more than just skill on the field that will decide that, right? So your rotation locks as of right now, we all know, right? It's Chris Sale, it's Ronaldo Lopez, it's Spencer Schwellenbach. Those 3 guys combined for 75 starts last year, combined for 437 innings, and they are penciled in as your 1 through 3 in some order. I'm assuming Lopez would be the 2 and Schwellenbach would be the 3, based on how Brian Snitker likes to defer to veterans over young kids. I'm assuming Lopez would be the 2, Schwellenbach would be the 3 to open the season. We do have to be cautious, and I've talked about this on the show before. We do have to be cautious about assuming this rotation can be as good as it was last season. There is absolutely reason to expect growth. There is absolutely reason to expect the floor to not be as low because you're not, hopefully, not getting terrible starts from guys like Alan Winans and Darius Vines, right? So there are paths to improving. At the same time, we do have to understand that there is potential regression here, either in health or in performance, for both Chris Sale and Ronaldo Lopez, right? Chris Sale, 177 2/3 innings. He had 151 the previous 4 years combined because of multiple different health issues. But Chris Sale led all of baseball in a bunch of categories. And just statistics and things like that, the way that those things work, it's likely that regresses a little bit, right? He didn't. Here's the wild thing to me. There are reasons to think Chris Sale could be even better. People who watched every game, every Chris Sale start, you'll remember some of the bad defensive play, specifically of Jorge Soler out in right field for Sale, how some runs scored against there. I think that would lead you to realize the difference in ERA, 238, and fielding independent pitching, 209, is because of some poor defense behind Chris Sale. Now, at the same time, the expected ERA for Chris Sale, while still really good, was 280. So he underperformed his fielding independent pitching. He overperformed his expected ERA. He did better than his expected ERA. So something to keep in mind there. And his fastball, which is not his primary pitch, right? He threw his slider more than his fastball. His fastball wasn't actually incredibly productive in 2024, right? His four-seam fastball gave up a 281 average. Now, some bad luck, expected ERA of 240, but 281 average and a 443 slug. expected slug of 387. But still, the point here is the four-seamer, you could see theoretically that pitch getting a little bit better with some just more normal luck to it, right? The year before, his expected batting average on the four-seamer was 237, so 3 points better. Only 3 points of batting average better. And he allowed a 252 average as compared to a 281. This is just a random variation. You can see how Chris Sale could get a little bit better with just more normal luck on the fastball. But all in all, it's likely that he regresses a little bit to just a very good pitcher rather than a Cy Young winner, right? I'm going to tentatively pencil him in 150 to 170 innings, hoping the health is there, with a slight step back in ERA and probably in WAR too. Now, I will say, Brian Snitker said he has spoken to Chris Sale. Quote, "Yeah, I've talked to him a couple times. He feels great. I'm happy he was rewarded for the season that he had. I know having a normal offseason is going to be huge for him again this year coming in." Chris Sale says he feels good. He's telling Brian Snitker he feels good. Sale, Lopez, Schwellenbach, you're 1-3. I think Schwellenbach's going to be even better, right? This is something I think you have to remember. He was a two-way player in college that primarily was a closer. Since high school, Spencer Schwellenbach has thrown 265 in the third innings. Minors, majors, all that, college, all that combined. And yes, he came from Double-A Mississippi to the majors, but he made two starts across 13 innings in Double-A before he came to the majors. He practically came straight from High A to the bigs. And 20 earned runs his first 6 starts. Obviously not great. Was 1-4 record, 5.68 ERA. From there on, 7-3 record, 2.54 ERA, and he only once allowed more than 3 earned runs. I think Schwellenbach can be better than the 3.35 ERA he put up last year. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say it will happen, but I think he can be better because he recovered to a 3.35 despite having an ERA of almost 6 in his first couple outings, his first month and a half in the majors, right? After those 3 guys, my favorites as of now for your 4 and your 5, Ian Anderson and Grant Holmes. There's a couple reasons to this. One, both AA and Snit talked about Grant Holmes in their media availabilities, right? A said he confirmed that they are having Grant Holmes in the rotation. That was in the closed portion, so no clips of that. And then Snit in his media availability, let me pull the transcript here. What he did for us was really good. How he took on the responsibility, took advantage of the opportunities that he had. I'm very happy for him, what he brings, and the versatility that he has. If he's not starting and can be a length guy, he has been a bridge guy. We've used him in all the different roles last year. His stuff plays. I have a lot of confidence in him. Okay. The other reason why I think we need to at least pencil in Ian Anderson and Grant Holmes as the favorites right now. Neither man has options left. If Ian Anderson doesn't make the opening day roster, you could potentially lose him. Same with Grant Holmes. Now, Grant Holmes, he's done every single role. You could throw him in the bullpen. You could absolutely throw him in the bullpen. It is realistic to assume that he would be able to step back into that role. And honestly, that's what I expect to happen when Strider comes back, is Grant Holmes goes to the bullpen, and he's the guy. Maybe he starts. Maybe he comes in if a dude gets knocked out early. If you don't need a 6th starter for a stretch, he's your long man out of the pen who can come into a game if somebody gets knocked out in the 2nd or the 3rd and can give you plenty of innings. Maybe it's a situation where he ends up working in shorter stints, letting the fastball eat. I think there's a lot of options for Grant Holmes. Ian Anderson, I don't know if they're willing to try him in the bullpen. I went back and looked. He has 156 professional baseball appearances. He has never come into a game as a reliever. And if you think about the fact that he was a first-round pick in 2016 out of high school, and not only a first-round pick, third overall in 2016 by the Braves, and how those Studley prep pitchers get used by their high schools, it's entirely possible Ian Anderson's never pitched out of the bullpen. Ever in his life. It's entirely possible that maybe there was some sort of tournament. He came back on short rest and, a tournament, playoff game in high school. He replaced a struggling starter and came in on short rest and pitched or whatever. But it's possible he's never, ever worked in relief. Being 68 innings removed from Tommy John surgery, I don't know if the Braves are going to ask him to do that either. So Ian Anderson might be your number 4 or number 5 as long as he looks okay in Grapefruit League play, simply because if he's not, you either have to ask him to do something brand new for the very first time in Major League Baseball, or you have to potentially lose him if you try to get him down to the minors. In just a second, let's talk about the other candidates who we expect, how many guys Snit wants to have in spring training, and then some of the prospects that may compete for spots, as well as who's left to add in free agency. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby wrapping up the Max Fried signing by looking at what's left in Atlanta's rotation. We've already talked about Chris Sale, Reynaldo Lopez, Pitcher Swellenbach are your 1 through 3. I think as of now, the favorites for your 4 and 5 should be Ian Anderson and Grant Holmes, as both men are out of options. If you sign somebody, they probably take Grant Holmes' spot, and Holmes ends up being your 6th man. He's in your bullpen officially, but he goes back and forth between bullpen and rotation, right? I think your other back-end candidates here, AJ Smith-Shawver and Bryce Elder. And this kind of lines up with what Snit said on Monday. He said that he wasn't worried about the rotation, right? You had time to add more guys, and he's either way. Here we go. We're still going to go to camp. We'll probably get 7 guys at least stretched out and ready to go because we're going to use them again. We're going to need a lot of guys just like we did last year. And Atlanta hasn't used just 7 starters in a year since it's been a long time. And a lot of people were worried about this quote. I think I mentioned this the other day in something. I didn't interpret that as we only need 7 guys. I interpreted that as we want to have 7 realistic options stretched out and ready to go for the 5 opening day spots. And then the 2 guys the 2 or more who don't take those spots will start off in AAA, and we'll have whatever offseason ads we make, and we'll have prospects that we can call up to eventually get somewhere between 10 and 13. Because you've used I went back and pulled the last 4 seasons, so not counting 2020, although you used a lot in 2022. Not counting 2020, the Braves have used either 10 or 13 starters in every single season. And what's wild is if Ian Anderson, for some reason, is not in your rotation this year, you won't bring back a single start from that 2021 rotation, which is wild. Charlie Morton, Max Fried, Ian Anderson, Drew Smiley, Huascar Yanoa, who just signed with the Twins, Touki Toussaint, Kyle Muller, Bryce Wilson, Tucker Davidson, Kyle Wright. You won't bring back a single start from 2021 if Ian Anderson doesn't make the rotation or Charlie Morton doesn't sign in free agency. 2022, the only guy you would have back, you have Strider and you have Bryce Elder. And I think that's Bryce Elder and AJ Smith-Shawver are the other 2 candidates to fill that final spot in the rotation, right? Things you have to do here, right? Bryce Elder has to look a little bit better at swing and miss, and he can't continue to miss with that slider in the zone. Things he's got to fix. AJ Smith-Shawver's got to get the control a little more dialed in, specifically on the fastball. I feel like he hung that at times. He gave up hard contact on that at times. He has to get a little bit better with that if he wants to take one of those spots. It's absolutely possible. I think it's preferable if you can get one of those two guys, and this is again assuming you don't sign anybody, if you can get one of those two guys into a rotation spot to start the year so that Grant Holmes can be in the pen, give you that sixth starter you're going to need. If it's me, I'd rather have Smith-Shawver. Give me the dude with the stuff that is working on the control versus the guy that doesn't have the stuff and sometimes also doesn't have the control in Bryce Elder. I did also highlight 4 different potential prospect ads that you could see during the season. There's more, obviously, but my 4 favorites, Hurston Waldrop, Connor Gillespie, Drew Hackenberg, and Lucas Braun were the 4 guys that I highlighted Atlanta could try or could see some time in 2025. Waldrop and Gillespie are on the 40-man roster. Hackenberg and Braun are not. I do Hackenberg the most. He reminds me of a guy. His curveball is not the quality of Max Fried's. I don't think hardly anybody's curveball is, but he reminds me a lot of a guy like Max Fried who can be versatile, right? He throws a 2-seamer, he throws a 4-seamer, he throws a curveball, he throws a cutter, he throws a changeup. Atlanta loves to give dudes sliders as well. This really feels like a situation where he can prioritize ground balls with that 2-seamer, right? Last year, 53.9% ground ball rate, second best in the entire organization behind Luis Diavilla. He gets swing and miss with the 4-seamer and the curveball. He uses the cutter against lefties. The changeup does really well to get weak contact and some swing and miss if guys are trying to hit that fastball too much. And so he can be flexible and do different things based on what opposing teams are trying to give him. So I like Hackenberg as one of the prospects to come up and get major league starts in 2025. But I think the whole offseason plan is based on Spencer Strider, right? Because when he comes back and what condition his stuff is in absolutely can dictate how aggressive you need to be in the rotation this year. Let's say he's going to miss a month, right? The doctor said in the World Series, he's not going to be ready for opening day. And the thought process as of now is he's probably going to miss a month. Let's say he comes back in early May and he's 95% of his old self. That gives you 4 guys you would be comfortable throwing in a postseason game in Sale, Lopez, Schoenbach, and Strider. And that gives you other guys with promise, Smith-Shawver, if he can put it together, things like that you would not be afraid to throw in the postseason. That means your ad this offseason you can prioritize innings. A back-end guy who can take innings. Maybe that's bringing Charlie Morton back. Maybe that's a swingman like a Michael Lorenzen or somebody, right? What if Strider's a June return? And what if they think he'll be at 80% of what he was when he comes back, or 85%, right? Then you need to be a little more aggressive about going out and getting a guy you would feel comfortable throwing in the postseason. They don't want to do the qualifying offer, so it's not going to be like a Nick Pivetta, it's not going to be a Sean Manaea. Is it a Jack Flaherty? Is it a Walker Buehler? I think Walker Buehler is a sticky stuff merchant, and I don't want him, but maybe it's one of those guys. Maybe it's a trade, right? They try to trade for Sonny Gray. They try to trade for Garrett Crochet. I don't think Braves have the position players to get Crochet, but we'll see. Maybe there's some word that Jesus Luzardo is going to be made available by the Marlins. Maybe it's something like that. It's just, I think or else there's another tier of guys like Andrew Heaney, veterans like Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander. We did a whole show on this, right? You can go back and find the show in the feed. A whole show about possible pitching ads at all kind of different prices and tiers. But to me, the rotation decision is dictated by how you feel about Spencer Strider. If you think Strider's going to be back earlier in the season and be close to himself. It feels like Atlanta can spend more money on the outfielder they need. Maybe they can get involved in that shortstop market with a Ha-Sung Kim or a Hae-Sung Kim. If they feel like they have to throw a bunch of money at a starter so that they have another postseason option, you probably can't touch shortstop at all. And you probably have to settle for a second tier option, your backup option in the outfield. I'll be really curious to see what happens. This has been Braves Today for Wednesday, December 11th. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop a new episode, and also leave a 5-star review because I love words of affirmation. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.